Let's do this. I don't think TF2 needs an elaborate introduction. It's amazing how an FPS can go years without any major support from its developers and still pull tens of thousands of players on average. But even before this drought, there has been a decade of content updates to chew on. But in that time, you are bound to have made some awful weapons and equipment, which is why we're here today. Now there's a lot of ways you can evaluate worst, and I wanted to take as many variables into consideration as possible. You know, so long as they don't contradict each other. So for the purposes of this video, a bad weapon in TF2 is one or more of the following. 1. A weapon with a bad stat line. 2. Is a bad idea in concept. 3. Has poor execution. 4. Encourages bad player behavior. 5. Is a crutch in general. 6. Was good at one point, but has long since been nerfed into the ground. And 7. Not fun to use. I think that about covers our bases, so with that being said, here it is, the top 10 worst Team Fortress 2 weapons, the 2021 edition. Is that gonna help me get views? Among the contenders for the best of the worst, many of them were cut due to just being boring. The original Panic Attack would have been great, but now it's just an okay shotgun side grade. The Man Melter is related to a personal bugbear of mine, and it's the weakest of the flare guns, but at least it does provide something that the other flares don't do. But ultimately, for the worst of the boring, look no further than the Razorback. I was there for the Spy vs Sniper update. Me and Caret thought the Huntsman was a cool idea and something new and exciting, and then day 3 of the update landed and we got a wooden shield. A shield whose only purpose is to counter a specific part of a specific class. Look, it's not like the Sniper's close range game was going to win him any awards. It's not supposed to. You should be punished for letting people get too close. But of all the secondaries you could have given him to mitigate this downside, the best we got was this Roadrunner looking ass shield that politely asks players to misplay? Really? And yeah, even back in the day, any spy worth their salt is just gonna revolver you down. And the salt in the wound? The Ambassador was introduced in this update. They were more prepared than ever to handle these janky ass shields. And that's just against the spy matchup. This shield really isn't going to help you against the scouts, soldiers, and occasional pyros that are going to be heading your way. And once the Cozy Camper was released, this thing was all but forgotten in pubs. It does see its brief uses in Highlander, since the quick reaction time of a high-level sniper allows them to headshot people that shoot them once. Like an aimbot, but with actual game sense. But needing high-end skill to make your weapon just okay is not a good weapon make.
Crispy sheep, there's a spy coming.
I may be a pyro main, but I can concede that among the 9 classes, he is the one with the least defined role. He's a good flanker, outdone by scout and soldier due to their movement speed. He's a pretty handy damage dealer, but is outburst by soldier and demo. And he can deal out some good spot removal, undermined by sniper and spy. As such, his arsenal is all over the place, so much so that 4 of his weapons are on this list, including his second most underwhelming secondary, the Gas Passer. This is such a cool idea. The Pyro's own Girardi that allows him to create a huge deluge of fire damage. The potential carnage can be seen in MVM, or could be seen. It got nerfed there. And it fares even worse against human opponents. Without artificial upgrades, this thing charges slow. Like, really slow. And you don't even get a freebie like the Girardi or Mad Milk. So the fact that this thing still inherited all of the Mad Milk and Girardi's counters is less forgivable. Not to mention how fickle this damn thing is. I've seen people walk right into the gas cloud and not get wet. Wet. But all those variables out the way, and what do you get? A gas effect that ignites players on any damage source, which you can do by yourself already. From a support perspective, there are many better ways for a pyro to be a pyro. Letting your teammates cause fire damage is incredibly incidental in the long run. Aspiring pyros are better off trying to air blast major threats away, or just bust out the classic homewrecker to help your engineers. Some tweaks could really make this thing shine as its own secondary above the flare and shotgun. But I'm not betting on a content patch anytime soon to make this thing work. See how I'm willing to date this video in order to hopefully get a new update in the future? You're welcome.
Look, it ain't scan all humans, or observe all humans, or even impersonate all humans. It's destroy all humans.
The Gorkborg weapons are truly alien for this game, as in they mostly have an alien understanding in how TF2 weapon design works. So much so that all of them were at some point or another contenders for this list. It's not that experimentation is unwanted, but in order to keep with the theme of science, they had to really mix up the formula. For example, all but one of these weapons do not require ammo boxes. So it was only a matter of time before one or more of these showed up. Oh hey Thompson, it's been a while. Yes, here we have the first proper weapon that isn't so much bad in usefulness, but bad for the game itself. Admittedly, this is more for the Thompson's early iterations when it pierced targets. Now, this by itself is just annoying and minimized by the slightly less damage dealt per shot, but then that is undermined by this weapon's worst aspect, in the fact that it can reduce cloak for spies and uber charge for medics. And I'd like to remind you now that this thing has unlimited ammo. So with all of this, you could spam this thing pretty mindlessly and most likely ruin all offensive push. And this is compounded by the thing's stupid hitbox. Energy particles must be hard to quantify in Source 1, since you're more so shooting an actual farmhouse at your opponent instead of actual bits of plasma. The piercing was removed years back, but it's still not in NG's position to be able to handle two of his major threats so easily with such careless abandon. It might handle better if the reduction came with a damage boost and needed sentry kills, like the Frontier Justice. Anything that doesn't encourage the much maligned Turtle NG playstyle. It's only because the Thompson is attached to a character who is, well, alright in direct combat, not ideal for it, that it's not higher up on this list. But it doesn't stop the Thompson from being a bug zapper of bad FPS ideas. Hell, concept art showed this possibly having a charge shot that would have stunned enemies. Oh my fucking god. But as it stands, the Thompson is an alright weapon that gives you too much for how little you would put into it. A theme we will be returning to quite soon. Am I scary? Tell me I'm scary. I think a lot of us would have savored the Jungle Inferno update more if we knew it would be preceded by the longest update drought in TF2 history yet. The weapons we got ranged from immediate staples to solid side grades to we'll get back to you, but the one I feel had the most wasted potential had to be the thermal thruster. It's a jetpack! It's a godforsaken jetpack for pyro, and you managed to fumble it this hard? When I saw this thing in the Jungle Inferno promo, my thinking was that it was going to be a fiery dash that would improve Pyro's mobility and bring him closer to the likes of Scout or Soldier or even Demo Man. Maybe ignite and push back players to make it a bit more offensive? Even if it was just a lamer rocket jump, it would be viable so long as you could keep your flamethrower at... Well, shit. Yeah, you gotta deploy this thing to use it. And it's not really slow, but it feels slow. And it's way too obvious to see you pull it out in order to use it impulsively during a firefight. Well, perhaps you could use it to stage a flank, yeet into the air and catch people by surprise. Well, launching with this thing is loud, and anyone who has their sound turned up, i.e. a good player, they're gonna hear you coming from a mile away. It also sets you up to be on the receiving end of someone's airshot compilation. Or sentry. Mostly a sentry. At the end of the tunnel, this thing doesn't do anything to make it stand out against the tried and true method of Trollger. If that's too difficult for you, it sure as hell is too difficult for me. A sticky jumping demo is way more smooth and won't alert the entire enemy team to your presence. And both of these options are way more viable in platforming maps. A variable that made this thing take the place of the base jumper. Seriously, how do you make a jetpack lame? You have to try!
I should be dead.
So, I'm no stranger to Scout, but given that this is the only Scout primary on the list, I could not in good conscience talk about this weapon myself and give it justice. Or injustice, I guess. So, my best friend Caret has offered to step in and voice his own personal history with the Babyface's Blaster. Take it away, Rabbit.
June 26th, 2012. Hype for the Pyromania update is through the roof for myself and many others. As Day 2 gets posted, the new weapons of the update are revealed. And I see it. An alternative Scout primary that doesn't give up any of its 6 shots, and allows the fastest on-foot class in the game to snowball into moving even faster. I was instantly sold. I stockpiled metal, Scout weapons, and relevant tokens all day, just so that I could have access to this weapon as soon as possible. Then launch day hit, and after fighting through the server problems inherent to every update, mashing that craft button until it went through, I managed to get my hands on the 27th ever crafted Babyface's Blaster. 8 years and 2 relevant patches later, and I only ever equipped the thing long enough to show off my craft number. How did we get here? The initial iteration of the weapon was hard to get a grip on for a lot of players, looking like an unfocused, overstuffed kitchen sink of stats. I personally enjoyed it as a mid-range option, not unlike the shortstop. The tighter spread allowed you to hit decent shots from further away, and the speed boost, once it kicked in, allowed you to stay at that range. But even I'll admit that the initial speed penalty killed any chance of this weapon being competitively viable in this state. Moving slower than a demo man on spawn ruins the scout's ability to get to the fight, or return to the fight after a death. It was fun to be untouchable in pubs for those of us who were disciplined enough to keep our hands off the jump button, but something needed to change for this weapon to be taken seriously. A year and a half later, the Babyface's Blaster saw a rework focused more on its unique boost gauge, with downsides that are less compromising to the way Scout is played in most circumstances. He's still faster than any other class on spawn, it has 4 shots instead of 6, there's no differences to stock in regards to spread or damage, and it only loses a portion of boost on double jump instead of all of it on any jump. It was more in line with what most people expected from a Scout primary, and its ability to pick up speed for successful combat was kept intact. It wasn't as unique as its first form, but it was at least appealing to more players. In Valve's eyes, problem solved. Right? Well, as it turns out, the Scout's normal movement speed is already brushing up against the limit of what the Source Engine can keep up with. And if you go any faster than that for an extended period of time, you'll outpace your hitbox. As use of this weapon became more widespread, so did this particular problem. Scouts using this weapon became very difficult to hit, and nigh impossible to kill as long as they kept moving. This reign of terror lasted another year and a half. Then in the Gunmetal update, it was changed so you lose a hefty chunk of your boost whenever you take damage. This change trashed the weapon in a way that might not be obvious, even if it was an easier solution than correcting the underlying engine problems. Its current form is terrible in an insidious way. One of the Scout's major strengths, and a huge part of why he's so fun to play, is that his high movement speed can be used as sort of an aim assist. You can make general swings and aim with your mouse, and then finer adjustments with your movement keys until you've lined up a good shot on your enemy. So what happens when your movement speed is no longer consistent? It's simple. Your aim is no longer consistent. By losing so much movement speed on taking damage, you forfeit any consistency in your aim. In a 1v1, or in getting pickoffs after being spotted by any enemy with a hit scan weapon, you can no longer rely on your muscle memory to line up shots while staying on the move. Equipping this weapon in its current form inevitably transforms damage that would be cuts and bruises with stock into a lost fight or a failed pickoff without the reason necessarily being clear to the user. Earlier iterations didn't harm your consistency because once you reached full boost, it was much more within your power to stay there. You knew exactly when you were going to change speeds and by how much, and you could feasibly account for it. That's no longer the case. At the end of the day, Babyface's Blaster is a good idea for a weapon, but the aging Source Engine just isn't up to the task of realizing it in a way that's fun and fair for all parties involved. Were the bug with high movement speed and hitboxes easily fixable, this gun wouldn't have needed to be nerfed so far into the ground. However, if the choice is between hordes of nigh unkillable scouts ruining the game for everyone else, or just another scout primary that's not worth equipping over stock, then maybe it's for the best if my precious memento just sits comfortably in its display case.
Hey, yeah! Yo, come on! Come on! Come on! Let's do
I love how broken the skybox is in this map.
You want dance? Yo, let's do this! Let's do this! Come on! Come on! Yo! Come on! You want dance?
Truth be told, the first iteration of this list had way more melee weapons than I want to admit. The warrior spirit was near the bottom, in case you were wondering. Upon reevaluation, me and Rabbit agreed that we were putting way too much emphasis on melee weapons in a first-person shooter. So we boiled it down to 2 weapons, and if we're being honest, I still personally feel like this one should be higher. The Sun on a Stick, along with its brother the Sharpened Volcano Fragment, were both originally going to be reskins. Sunny was going to be one for the Boston Basher, and the Volcano Fragment was going to be an Extinguisher. Are you kidding me? An Extinguisher reskin? Back when that weapon was the fucking bomb? Oh my god! And I thought making the Hot Dogger all class was goofy. I think getting off track is a testament to how useless this weapon is, and yet still how boring it is to really talk about. Its entire upside is dependent on your team's comp. Even if your entire team is some fire belchers, its reduced damage means its crit runs about 76 damage per swing, whereas a meat shot from a stock scattergun is about 108. Now bats do swing more than a scout's primary fires, but thanks to some math by Caret, he deduced that the scattergun's DPS is still higher than the son of a bitch's by 10 points. This weapon should be grateful that it's on a class whose melee options are really sparse, and it's not as important as, say, pick a class at random, Pyro's melee choices. Cause this thing was at number 2 for the longest time until we decided it only belongs in the middle of the road. Mediocre even for a worst weapon. Finishing up the melee weapons, we have something that did the impossible, being worse than not only the Sun on a Stick, but the stock Fire Axe. The Hot Hand is not only the worst melee weapon in the entire game, but also the most superfluous. A padded glove that grants movement speed on hit, so the disciplinary action, without its extended hitbox. Or the fact that you can hit allies with it as well and still get the speed boost. Great. What puts this above the Sun on a Stick in terms of uselessness? Well, at least the Sun on a Stick does something completely unique compared to all other scout melees. It's worthless, and good scouts don't need fire resistance, but it's still something. Any of the Hot Hand's upsides are undermined by all of the Pyro's good melee weapons. The speed boost, the power jack, melee potential, back scratcher, and the extinguisher to some extent. Meme potential? You know what? Fine, you got me. Enjoy your 8 minutes of kill montages to hide under your 3 hours of endless deaths, you crazy kids. I consider this more of a part 2 to the Sun on a Stick. I really have nothing else to say about this one. So, cards on the table. Sniper is my least play class. What can I say? Aiming is for chumps, and I can only get so much mileage out of throwing my piss at poor people. But I think even the good snipers among you can agree that the classic is very much bad enough to take home the bronze. This is Valve's first and last attempt to bring a Team Fortress Classic weapon to Team Fortress 2, and I think there's a good reason for that. TFC, even at high levels, is a completely different animal to Team Fortress 2. Well, first off, just look at this. These are some fast boys. This is a game where even the medic's movement has a high skill ceiling, so naturally the classic in that game has to be super powerful to compensate. And that's where the problem starts. The stock sniper rifle is already an adaptation of the classic, retooled for the slower pace and speed of TF2. Now the way the classic worked in the first game is that you could headshot whether or not you were scoped, but the downside is you had to charge by holding down mouse 1 until a bar filled. Can you imagine a gun like that being brought 1-to-1 in TF2? Salty players have enough reason to call accusations against good snipers right now. So how did they change it? Well, headshots can only happen if the gun is fully charged. Like, even if you headshot them. Like, in the head. Not fully charged, not a headshot. Sorry. This is hilarious since being able to headshot while unscoped is supposed to increase flexibility, but not being able to quickscope anybody, yeah, this gun doesn't work. Equip this weapon only if you want to roleplay as a sniper who has just shit their pants. This next weapon has some major baggage for how annoying it is. So much so that it landed in second place, even though, speaking subjectively, it's not a useless weapon at all. You know it, you hate it, you revel in the deaths of people who use it. It's the dead ring-a-ding-dinger-ring, the dead ringer. Very, very few weapons in TF2 outwardly reward you for playing badly. Feigning death to escape a fight you had every right to lose is annoying for anyone who isn't named Heavy or Pyro. Like, I get the plight, even for good spies, it's a crapshoot whether or not your target will just decide to turn around and whack you. And the Dead Ringer was made to mitigate those blue balling moments by giving good spies a second chance. But the issue with that is that it gives bad spies a second chance. This thing already takes away your ability to get behind enemy lines without being turned into Swiss cheese. So the standard pub tactic, that I have used multiple times myself, would to be bull rush the enemy, die on purpose, go for the sneaky bit, and either get kills I kinda don't deserve or die quickly after. Either way, I've learned nothing as spy. This watch was also stupid good with the Saharan Spy set. Yeah, remember when Valve thought it was a good idea to include set bonuses? The Saharan Spy set turned all of your decloaks completely silent, including the Dead Ringer's deliberately loud one. I so wish I had the footage of me back in the day getting all these kill streaks I did not earn. Crutch is a word I haven't used yet to describe these weapons, and it perfectly sums up this and our number one. Good to pro spies are just better off using the Cloak and Dagger or the Stock Watch. Aspiring spy mains would be better off doing the same. Save yourself the trouble of watching yourself die twice. Here are some honorable mentions before we get to number one. I need a moment to, prepare. Alright, you can do this, Crispy. You got this. Just tone down the rage, be dignified. We got this. Okay. This weapon is controversial. I think it's safe to say that it is the most divisive weapon in the entirety of TF2. So I understand that putting it at number one here for some of you is going to permanently damage my credibility before I even really get any. But I must stick to my guns and must admit that I personally believe that the worst weapon ever released for Team Fortress 2 is the gun.
Tricked you, it's Egypt and we're both flog pyros.
Yeah, I fooled no one with that, did I? I tried, boyos and goyos. I freaking tried to not be as predictable as hell. But what do you want from me? Look at this thing. Look at its stats. How could I not put it as number one? It ticks every box in my criteria I stated at the top of this video. Bad stat line? I consider no air blast on the pyro a bad stat, so yeah, ding. A bad idea in concept? Yeah, I would say so. Giving players free crits for playing recklessly all the time? No, it's a good idea. Mwah. Perfect. Got it. Print it. Has poor execution? See above. How could it not have poor execution? Encourages bad player behavior? The vlog didn't start the W plus M1 stereotype, but it sure as hell accentuated it. When you take out the deep complexities of air blasting, pushing away opponents, using it to run away, mastering the art of deflecting projectiles, how the hell are you not just gonna go unga bunga and charge at anyone and everyone regardless if it's a good idea? Is a crutch in general? Baby! The Phlogiston is the definition of a crutch. If there was a gamer dictionary and you looked up the word crutch, the Phlogiston would be right there, being held by a dumbass with shit in their pants. Taking away the air blast from the pyro is like taking away rocket jumping or sticky jumping from the soldier and demo respectively. And you will never see a good pyro use this thing unless they are absolutely memeing. Was good at one point, but now has been nerfed into the ground? It takes the bronze on this one. Mainly because its original iteration fully healed you when you activated the crits, allowing the Flog player to get away from deadly situations with massive kill streaks, even though they had every reason to die by being that stupid to get that deep into enemy lines. And finally, it's not fun to use. Yeah, not really. Okay, inflated rage aside, I really don't get this one. Of all the crutch weapons in Team Fortress 2, this one has the highest potential for dopamine hits. As such, while it is incredibly easy to punish these guys, the punishment will almost never be enough to encourage them to stop using it, like, say, the Liberty Launcher back when it was sucky, or the Dead Ringer now, because those kill streaks are more than enough to encourage them to go back to using this thing. It can put them in a perpetual loop where they never have to get better. And as a pyro main who acknowledges that mechanically he is the weakest class, offends me more than any weapon ever could. I hate this thing. I seriously hate it. I refuse to use it to get footage for this video. Hell, if I get it in a drop, I delete it immediately. I refuse to wear a hat that is 1/27th flog. And I can't think of any better way to end this. The upside to TF2's content stagnation is that this list will stay relevant for longer than normal. But it could also mean that the universe will want to screw me over by releasing an update to make it irrelevant with some major balance changes, guys? Valve? Well, either way, I've said my piece. This has been Crispy the Sheep.